back a year ago.
This episode of the Beer Bound Podcast is brought to you by Rolling Hops Beer Tours.
Hey everybody, Garrett here from Rolling Hops, as always joined with my partner,
Andy.
We're here to tell you guys about our virtual craft beer tour offering. With what's going on in the world, unfortunately, we haven't been able to run our historical craft walking beer tours, so we've pivoted to taking the virtual experience of craft beer directly to you guys. Wonderful for team building events, corporate events, even just a night out or in, for that matter, with your friends and family. And we're doing this online.
Have any questions about the beer tours or want us to tailor make an event for you? Just shoot us an email or send us a message on any form of social media. Rolling Hops, you can find us everywhere.
RollingHopsBeerTours.com is where you can get a hold of us, and we'll see you guys soon.
Cheers.
Okay, welcome everyone to another episode of the Beer Bound Podcast. We are very excited to be joined by Kyle Wilson from Top 5 Solutions. Top 5 Solutions provides equipment for breweries and beverage companies, both on the process and packaging side. The company is a partner network of manufacturers. Top 5 Solutions adds value with project management throughout the preparation and delivery process, as well as integration and coordination between multiple manufacturers. So without further ado, we welcome Kyle to the Beer Bound Podcast. Hello, Kyle. How are you?
Hi, guys. Hi, Andy. Hi, Garrett. Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course.
Welcome.
We're very excited to speak with you. Well, Kyle, maybe start us off. Who are you? Tell us a little bit about your connection to beer, the manufacturing side. Give us your little bio.
Sure, yeah. So my name's Kyle Wilson. I work for a company called Top 5 Solutions. You kind of gave the spiel, I guess, already, but to kind of put it more plainly, we help customers, typically breweries, but beverage companies as well, find solutions to problems, and it's usually an equipment-based solution, and we help bring in the right equipment for them. So that's the really short way of kind of putting that into perspective. Before this, before that, I was doing. I ran my own company called Lunar Mobile Canning. We, like other mobile canning companies, we canned beverages for breweries, cideries, wineries, all sorts of beverage companies, and it was a fun job, but a lot of travel, a lot of early mornings and late nights. So it got a little too much for me personally, but so I kind of left that business and kind of joined what I'm doing now. Before that though, I've been in beer for the last 8 or 10 years. I've worked at a number of breweries, big and small, in between as well, all sorts of jobs, brewing, everything in the cellar, packaging. It's kind of like you wear a lot of hats in the smaller breweries, but bigger breweries was doing some different stuff as well. And before that, I came from like a brewing education. I did my education at Niagara College for the brewing program there. And before that, I had some other degree that I never used. So we'll leave it at that. But so it's been about a decade or a little bit more in beer and beverage. But I've kind of transitioned into more of the equipment side of things the last 4 or 5 years. So yeah, that's my background anyways.
You're quite the jack of all trades in terms of beer, brewing, and beverage.
I guess I like to think so, but there's lots to learn still. It's packaging's always been kind of like or not, I guess equipment per se has been always been an interest of me more than anything else in brewing.
Right.
More than like the brewing of it or the process, I guess. But the equipment's always been kind of the thing that kind of lights up for me. So I've always kind of gravitated toward that area.
Mhm.
And you kind of realize like as you're brewing and things like, well, with certain equipment or certain processes or certain different ways of doing things, like we can improve the way our beer tastes or make things easier. And so you're always like just thinking like that, I guess. Packaging, I did some beer packaging for breweries, and yeah, it's a lot of manual work. And then obviously with my own stuff, the canning equipment was the one I had was probably one of the more complicated systems out there to learn, but it pays off in the end. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's a lot of different things last little bit.
Right. So Kyle, you graduate from the Niagara College Brewing course, which is pretty much the top-notch course that you can take in Canada in terms of individuals wanting to become potentially to have a career in brewing. Did you learn about manufacturing there at all? Was there any courses that pertain to that? Or am I fair to say that it was kind of a specialization in the actual brewing process as opposed to the peripheral side of the industry?
It was a little bit of everything, I would say. I think the main like the main issue, I guess, or point of contention was like there wasn't enough of like hands-on brewing. At least when I was there, it might have changed since in the last little bit, but it was a little bit of everything. So from equipment to business side of things to marketing to HR to the brewing and the science of certain elements and tasting. Yeah, it was a good mix of everything. It was like an intro to the world of breweries, I guess would be a good way to put it. But for a lot of people, myself included, like it would have been better to have more hands-on, but I understand why you can't do that. You need time and experience, and a lot of that can be done with your first and your early career jobs and in that career anyways. So it was a good place to get started for sure.
Well, so coming from that, point of education, like you said, you worked in a number of different breweries. Where was that, or if there was maybe a sort of eureka moments, like, I am leaning more towards the equipment side. Was there something that maybe triggered that? Like, this is my thing and I'm going to pursue it. Was there ever that sort of euphoric moment?
Well, it was more of like I wanted to I kind of wanted to set off on my own a little bit and run my own make my own decisions and run my own company. So initially it was kind of like, what would it take to open a brewery? And that was the real first thought. And I kind of did like the business plan. I looked at a lot of numbers and a lot of thought put into that. And I came to the conclusion that like, you're going to need, like, packaging is so important. People like, they miss it a lot. They kind of overlook it. And right away I was like, yeah, you're going to need like mobile canning for sure. Like no one can afford these systems when they're opening new breweries. It doesn't make any sense, but it's going to be so important to get those things on the market. So right away I was like, oh yeah, I would definitely use mobile canning. So I started to look into that, and there was like one company in the area clearly with too much demand. So then I kind of started going down that avenue and was very interested in the prospects of that. So that's why I started doing came up with the mobile canning route anyways.
Yeah, smart. Yeah, lots of demand for that for sure. And there's no shortage of craft breweries in and around Southern Ontario for sure. So where did you start predominantly? Like what geographical area did you get going at?
Like start canning, or in terms of like brewing?
Canning, when you started your canning business.
Just focused on like the general area, I guess. I live in Kitchener, so that was my obviously a start there and kind of go outwards. But it becomes like the further you get, it becomes less and less effective, because you got to drive an hour more and then an hour back. And then you got to pay someone an hour more, another hour back. And the longer you take, and then you get stuck in traffic and all these other like costs. So like the further you go, it really starts to diminish that sale potential. So I started to focus on like, where can I get bigger projects? So I started to really seek like setting up shop at a place for 3 or 4 or 5 days and running a lot of product. And then I had some more smaller customers along the way, but I was really focused on getting like larger contracts for those things. But to answer your question, I guess like Southern Ontario would be the focus, but if the volume was big enough, I would drive anywhere. So
Right. Go where the dollars are.
Yeah. So Kyle, you purchased a mobile canning system, and that was sort of, and operated it and found clients within breweries. Was that sort of it, or like, I have no idea what a mobile canning line costs. Like, is that, would you rent that, or like how much does a mobile canning line cost, Kyle?
Well, I mean, so the canning line is pretty much the same, whether it's mobile or not. But making it mobile, I mean, you have a lot of other expenses. You need a vehicle, you need some sort of way to transport the machinery. For me, that was a pickup truck and a trailer. You had to kind of keep up with your competition as well, so you're going to need some lab equipment. I had like an Anton Par C box. I had a CMC Kunke seam inspection software for testing seams. And then you're going to need like a delivery method of how to get cans on and off, a date coder, all those like little peripheral things that, they add up to a lot. So in all, like it was a lot of money for sure. So I mean, you're taking out a massive loan. I kind of remortgaged the house and convinced the wife to do this, and kind of just put all the chips in the middle and hope for the best. But it's if I were to do it again, I would say I would have brought in a partner. Maybe I could split some of the load financially, but also like just the workload as well. Right.
So you were just a one-man show.
It was just me, which was like, I wanted to keep the risk low, keep the cost low. So in that essence, it worked. But in the end, it was too much for one person to handle. No, so I was saying now, but like, obviously it was too much to handle as I'm describing it. It's it was a lot.
Right. And since then, like, I don't know if you're too aware anymore, but like, has the competition increased? Are there a lot more mobile canning companies now, just with the increase in craft breweries? Would you say that this sort of peripheral industry has increased, or there's still potentially growth if someone was wanting to take on this venture?
It's hard to say. I would say it grew a little bit. It grew especially during the pandemic, when everyone had to get everything into cans. So there was definitely a demand specifically then. I would say it grew a little bit. We'll see how things progress, but like, you kind of have to, at a certain point, like, breweries will start to get their own equipment. They'll either grow up to a point where they'll get it, or they'll and you'll stop seeing newer ones kind of enter the market. At a certain point, like, you're going to see, I would say, less of a demand, which is kind of one of the reasons I stopped doing it as well. It's who's to say it goes any direction, but there's definitely more of a demand in the last 5 to 7 years for co-packing, and that's where the real growth is. And that's, canning, or whether it's beer brewing, canning, packaging, but mostly producing a beverage and packaging it from start to finish on site. and having someone else do it entirely that's been the industry that's really kind of been driven for sure. So, and we've seen that a lot with breweries. They kind of take on more of a scope, whether it's brewing other people's beer or making other beverages for themselves or making beverages for others. But having the capability to do it from back to front is very valuable nowadays. And that's kind of where we're seeing a lot of growth with our current business with Top 5 is people are looking to do this, whether it's a brewery or someone else, but which means they need more equipment to make it more functional or more attractive for other clients. So typically that's starting with, if they already have a canning line, it's usually the next big addition is going to be a pasteurizer. So that's kind of the big thing a lot of these little co-packers are missing. But for a lot of these beverages that they're doing, they're non-alcoholic or they're full of sugar. So they really need to be more shelf stable. So that's where a pasteurizer comes into play.
So with co-packing, what you mentioned, just to confirm is, so it's essentially like, let's say an example of a brewery would be essentially like partnering with maybe a canning company to do it start to finish. Is that what you mean by co-pack?
So like you could have a brewery that is, so they might have extra demand or extra capacity, whether it's time or tanks or something. So they would, a client would come in, whether it's another brewery, it's another customer, said, can you brew a beer for me? Here's the recipe, here's the ingredients. And there's different levels, how much they work together on it, whether they could come in and brew it even. But they'll do that, the whole process, they'll ferment it, they'll finish it on site, and then most importantly, they'll package it, and who knows, and then something else after, maybe they'll put it in cartons or different mixed packs or pasteurize it or a lot of different options. But you could do it with other beverages as well. They might want to do, okay, I want to make a non-alcoholic tea. So they say, we're looking at these ingredients. They could bring them in for the brewery or the facility. They give a process, they mix it on site, they approve it. They run lab tests, so like things you might not normally have at other places.
Right.
And then you make it shelf stable and package it. So sometimes these are just one or two person companies with an idea, and they just want to come out with like a brand of beverage. Other times it's big corporations and big breweries that have run out of capacity at their current location. Or in the like even bigger scale, you might have someone like Guinness overseas. They'll co-pack at breweries in like a brewery in Ontario to make Guinness here, just because it costs less to brew it, package it here, pay someone else than to make it in Ireland and ship it over. So
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes
lots
sense.
of reasons for it, but the essence is you're paying someone to do it for you.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool.
Right. So you just sort of contract out the service, essentially.
Yeah, and the service could be anything, but typically it's producing a beverage and then you end up with a finished product on a pallet, and then you tell us where to ship it. So yeah, it makes it a lot easier for like if you were to start a brand of say it was like some sort of like a recovery drink, and you have an idea for it. You've been making recipes in the kitchen with your buddy, and you think this is a real hot product, and you've seen a lot of growth in this market. Like, what would you do to do it? Like, you're not going to go buy a building and put in this infrastructure and brew it on site and spend $1 million, and then you still only have like a third of the equipment you need. So just pay someone a fee. You do all the marketing, you do all the branding, and your job is to sell it. Their job is to just make it. So it makes it easy for people to get into the market with these products. And that's what we're seeing a lot of. And that's where a lot of the growth in beverages have been, is things like that, not beer per se, but non-alcoholic drinks, alcoholic drinks that are, simple. We call them like RTDs, ready to drink. So they have like vodka in them or something, and flavoring. It could be juices, that could be kombucha, it could be coffee, but yeah, it runs the gamut, everything. So
Yeah, I guess when you think breweries and whatnot, if they're co-packing, they could do all these things, even though some might think that it is really just mainly focused on the beer. But yeah, if you think about it, they still have all the big tanks and all the big equipment to make any sort of beverage. So why not? Yeah, that's
Exactly.
definitely super interesting. So like you said, top five is sort of, sounds like taking advantage of that co-packing demand. And you guys are, I guess you guys are doing that. So let's say, at the beginning of it all, like if someone said, I do have this extra capacity, would they then reach out to you guys to say, hey, like, I think I could utilize this for a little extra income? Are you guys the go-to to try and, facilitate all that?
No, not really. We wouldn't be like finding clients for people. That's not what we do, but we would, they might come back and say, look, we have a big contract, or we're seeing a lot of demand for customers making, they want to do like mixed packs of our cans. And right now we have people on the end of the line and they're just like, whatever, mixing packs by hand, and it's becoming really inefficient. Like, we're looking at some ways to do this differently. What are some ways? And so we could help them do that. We're in an equipment supply company. So we work with a number of manufacturers. We call them like best in breed. So we've taken who we think for this size of market and who our clients are, the best pasteurizers, the best canning systems, the best kegging systems, and we can recommend and how to use these things and what size and how big you should be thinking about. But really, like the name Top 5 comes from, we want to be asking customers, in an ideal world, if we were to sit down with every customer and we were able to get enough time and able to talk about these things, what are the top 5 ways that your facility or brewery can be, you name it, top 5 more ways to be more efficient, top 5 ways to make your beer better, top 5 ways to make a safer environment, any of those things that we're saying the top 5 things are probably going to be 80% of the whole problem. So let's count those 5 things, and maybe we focus on the top 2, and we start there. So I've got a customer that I've got a lot of customers I want to start co-packing, and they're all non-alcoholic drinks. I need a pasteurizer. What's the best way to do this? Well, we could look at a flash pasteurizer, which has some benefits and some cons. We could look at a tunnel pasteurizer, but how big do you need it? Do you want to have it for the future and for growth? What kind of products are you going to be doing? Certain things like that. Well, kind of how much room do you have? We can help kind of walk through the process of what you're looking to do, and with a customer focused in mind. So we're not so, we are kind of like a sales agency for these certain manufacturers, but we're also consulting with other opportunities, other solutions, and different ways that we've seen other people use these equipment to kind of make it an effective solution. So
okay,
Right.
yeah, that's interesting. So it's more so, as opposed to that brewery says, I got demand, okay, now I need a pasteurizer. They come to Top 5 and you sort of, okay, yeah, like you need a pasteurizer, but you also need to do this and this, almost taking like a bird's eye view of the situation, as opposed to just what you need right now to make it effective for the long run, sort of.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good way of putting it. Kind of a bird's eye view, because we want them, like, okay, if you came into directly to a pasteurizer manufacturer, yeah, well, we can sell you pasteurizer, that's great, but maybe they don't need a pasteurizer. Maybe the first thing they get is maybe they need a faster canning line. Maybe that will help them. Maybe that's more effective. Maybe they can can more. Maybe they can focus on pasteurizing later. Maybe they don't have room for a pasteurizer. Maybe you look at an upgraded canning system and a flash instead. So there's different ways of looking at it, but in the end, we want to just be building relationships with these customers so that they come back to us for the next solution. So we want to be as open and honest with them, and we're just trying to help, really. So if we can do that, then hopefully they can go to us every time they have an issue or a problem or a solution to solve, and we can be have an opportunity to help them anyways.
Kyle, is it more common for you to say visit a brewery and check out what they're doing, see what equipment they're using, and then make recommendations to them? Oh, you should top 5. Oh, you want to be more efficient, you want to produce more, here's top 2 or 3 or 5 solutions that you're recommending? Or do they come to you and say, this is what we want, and then you give them consultation more within a conversation? Or do you get your boots on the ground to their facility and actually check out what's going on?
Yeah, all 3 ways would be a suitable answer, and we like to approach it ideally boots on the ground, and like to check out the facility and get a feel for the people, the building, things that you might not bring up, like maybe the ceiling is too short or it's high and we could utilize some space, or that's always the right answer, I guess, is to be there. But sometimes you can't be there, or you don't want to be there to start. So a lot can be solved with remotely as well. But yeah, depending on what they're looking for, they might come to you with a direct need and say, I need this, and we can help them solve. Okay, you need a pasteurizer. Well, let's look at your beverage lineup and what makes the most sense in terms of how big to get it, what's the size, what utilities you need, what beverages you're running, and then how do we integrate all this? How do we take what you have now? Maybe it's a canning line. You're probably gonna need some conveying in between. So let's go ahead and get you a design for that. Maybe there's something we can reuse. Like we had a customer recently, they had a canning line and it ended with like a PACTEC applicator and a rotary table. But we reused like the back end of everything. So we took the rotary table and the PACTEC applicator, moved it to the back end, reintegrated it with the conveying, and put a pasteurizer kind of in the middle of their line. So yeah, just trying to kind of reuse what we have and save the customer some money eventually, but look to solve the solution that they're looking to do.
And can I give a cynical question to you?
Mm-hmm.
Why would the brewery trust you? Because they might probably they've come to you at the beginning, but not necessarily. Maybe you've gone to them. So
Yeah.
Why would they trust you? Because you're sort of entering their facility as potentially someone who is wanting to get the brewery to maybe spend a lot of money potentially in order to maximize something. So why do you think a brewery would trust someone like you or the services that you provide?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. So I mean, we are working for the manufacturers that we represent. Obviously, we do want to have some of our equipment into their facility, but like any other manufacturer that's looking to sell something, we just want it to be the right solution for them. So if we were dishonest and we provided something that didn't live up to expectations, or we didn't set the right expectation for them, or was not the right solution for whatever reason, it wouldn't look good. It wouldn't look good on us. And we would have, I mean, that customer wouldn't have anything good to say about us, like any other place that's selling anything. So we work a lot with word of mouth, and we want customers to be satisfied for the long haul. So we try to kind of provide and be honest as we can. If that doesn't work out, then obviously we have someone to we have someone to answer to, I guess. So I would just refer them to other customers we've worked with, and if they have good things to say, then I hope that would be help our case to be more trustworthy or more trusting of. So
yeah, that definitely makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly, it's hard to be
like
bad.
Yeah, you could hire. I'm sure there are like places that you could consult with, and they would have to be, upfront about what we're doing and what we're offering. You could say, yeah, there are definitely consultancies that do something different, where they're not beholden to other partners, but everyone's got their preferences, and we have ours too, I guess.
So maybe a bit further to Andy's question, and I totally agree that, word of mouth is sort of the best way to get business and build trust and build rapport, especially among, peers in your industry and new customers. Just thinking generally, sometimes an easy way to show how reputable you are is based on, designations or certifications or things like that. So is there anything like that in your industry, or maybe in the position that you are with Top 5, that, we have this certification which allows us to do this, or, maybe that it's not mandatory, but it's just, it's nice to have? Is there anything like that?
Like a certification, like not to what we're doing, I guess, no. But if someone was looking for like a specific license or specific like maybe you were looking for like a health and safety review so we could bring in someone to have that done. We would have, if you're looking for someone to do an engineering review on what's on your project, we would bring in someone to do that. So we wouldn't do any of that ourselves, but we have a network of enough people that we can, you don't have to go hunt for yourself. So that's, we
Right.
can give you a list of names of someone you can call for maybe you need a source of certain ingredients or a certain manufacturer of boxes. We can give you a list of people that we've heard of good things up to. So no, we don't really have like a certification or anything of that sort.
All right, but I guess, like you said, you sort of represent the top-notch manufacturers who are, know what they know and do what they do best and all that. So you sort of pick the cream of the crop that you work with only anyway.
Yeah, and ultimately the customer is, if they're satisfied with what they're being offered, they would place the order with the manufacturer themselves. So that contract between the manufacturer and the customer is direct, and we're just facilitating that in between.
Kyle, is there a recurring pattern that you see? Maybe we can stick with just the breweries that you work with, not the kombucha entities or anything, maybe just specifically with breweries. Do you see a recurring pattern with them, something that something that they're doing that's perhaps inefficient, perhaps wasteful in some way, something that you recommend over and over again in order to increase productivity or increase efficiency?
Depends on the size. So like a really small brewery, they don't have a lot of equipment anyways. There's only certain ways to get more efficient that's not going to break the bank. But like little things like for an example, like there's always problems with like date coding. Date coding is always like a bane of people their existence. So people recommend different things. I always recommend, if someone asks me what's a better way to do date coding, because I can't get date codes consistently, or they're not readable enough, and LCBO is not, they're kicking up a stink about not having date codes. The best one I always recommend is inverter boxes. So basically what that is, it's just a spiral shape. You'd put it on a conveyor. The can would go through the spiral just by the weight of the conveyor pulling it, and it would be flipped upside down. And then you would date code from the top down onto the can. Works 100% of the time, every time. Your print head will love you for it. Doesn't ever get wet. So it's like a really, really great solution for like a small cost. So if someone that's a good example. So like for $2,000, you could flip your can over and you could get perfect date codes all the time. For bigger breweries, there's so many different things where you could start to utilize that line of thinking, where you get more efficient. You could be doing it with like low fill detectors. That would be a good way to kind of get more feedback on low fills, but also high fills. Are you high filling your cans? maybe you're giving away 8 mils per can. Add that up over the course of a year, and it's a lot of beer. Maybe maybe you could do something to your brew house. We have a new partner actually from Germany. They do purely like brew house optimization. So they take a look, and they're often bigger ones, but it doesn't have to be. Where can we save little bits of energy and little bits of more efficiency in the process? So they have like a device, it's called the Machinist, and it would spray water. It's basically like a grist hydrator that works like worlds ahead of any other grist hydrator. So their work has shown you can save like 1% more of your, get 1% more extract out of your malt. So 1% doesn't sound like a lot, but when you brew giant amounts of beer all day long, you can really get some good return on your investment. We're talking like a month. Like some of these things are pretty good. One of their new products is really interesting. It's kind of got me like going deep into their work, but losses with dry hop beer is it's always been like, yeah, it's the thing. We're gonna lose lots of beer if we dry hop it, but hey, it's an IPA, it's a triple IPA, and that's what you get, and that's why we charge $9 for it, or whatever. But maybe there's a better way of doing it, and that way is to take those hops and not put them in the tank. So there's some methods where you're either not putting them in the tank, you're doing like an external dry hopping, or you're removing the solids much more effectively, saving all the beer that's at the bottom of the tank or stuck into the liquid sludge of your hop slurry. So we can actually take those hops and then have them come out almost to like a powder, saving like 4, 5, 6, 7% more of your beer volume with those heavy dry hop beers, which are already your top, like your big money movers for beer sales. They cost a lot already, but if you can save 7, 5, 6, 7% on those beers, that's a lot of money, and we can really pay that back really quickly too. So things like that. There's all sorts of options on processing, on packaging, even like carbonation. So take a look at like, okay, if you were to force carb a tank, how long does it take? How much time are you wasting doing that? So you got to wait for the tank to cool. You got to carb it overnight. Maybe you have some technology to help you do that a little bit, but it still takes a while. And then you have to check in and kind of refine the process, and then you can. But if you were to carbonate it in line, sure, the machine costs a lot of money, but you're saving all that time it takes to sit there. So now you have an extra 24 hours of a tank to use. So you could brew another beer or make another beverage. Also, you're saving CO2. Also, you're saving cleaning chemicals, and you're more accurate. And there's a whole multitude of different reasons to do it. But things like that, where once you start kind of looking into it, it really makes sense for the product quality, but also makes sense financially. So yeah, things like that. We're always pointing out little things like that.
Already great efficiencies that I would have never even heard of. So it's like definitely know your stuff from experience. Maybe just a question on the dry hopping. So I'm going to assume the dry hopping losses are due to like just a lot of that hop particulate that you can't get out of the bottom of the fermenter. Is that sort of what you're referring to?
Yeah. So like people do it a lot of different ways, but like in essence, you're just taking bags of hops and you're dumping it in the fermenter at a certain stage of whatever fermentation, or maybe it's like it's cold already, or it's cool, or there's lots of different ways to do it. But it sits there, it kind of mixes with the beer, or it doesn't mix with the beer, depending on how you do it, and then it just floats down the bottom, and it kind of builds up and it expands. Like I think it's like 9-fold or something. So like one pellet will end up being like that. So all that extra mass is from beer, so that's gone.
That's true.
And then you can't use any of that. You can't send it to the filter, the centrifuge, the next tank. So you're dumping it, and that's kind of just cost of doing business, typically, but maybe there's a different way to do it. So
Yeah, good point. It's not like you're getting in there and squeezing that sludge to get the beer out. So it's interesting perspective.
Yeah, I feel I'm learning so much from you, Kyle. How do you vet the manufacturers that you work with? How do you tell the quality of a good manufacturer? That's my part A to that question. And also, where are most of the manufacturers you work with? Where are they on the planet? You mentioned one in Germany.
yeah, so they're all over the world, I guess. I mean, we don't have hundreds, but Germany, France, the US, and Canada. I guess that's it. But how do you vet one? Yeah, that's important, but a lot of it's you want to see other people using it, good feedback from other customers, a good name in the marketplace. You want to be able to vet the people that run the process, the company, make sure they're strong financially. What kind of manufacturing capability they have? Are they going to be someone that's just two people in a garage, or are they a big multinational corporation? I mean, it's going to be somewhere in between, but kind of the process they work, their communication level, their service, all those things kind of go into it. But in the end, basically, it's how it performs. Is the cost something that a customer would be willing to live with? Usually, the manufacturers partners we're seeking out tend to be on the higher end of the scale, but there's a reason for that, and our job is to kind of show the brewery why that might be important. So yeah, I mean, we got in Germany, we have a company that does kegging and cleaning equipment. They're called M&F Keg Technik. They exclusively specialize in kegging stuff. They've been around for 30 years or more. Great company to work with. Some great products. In France, we work with Actimium. They do inline carbonation solutions, some other beverage solutions as well, like dosing. The company I was referring to in Germany earlier with the hop dosing technology was Bonke. And then we have a brewhouse manufacturer out in BC called Koenig Brewing Systems. We work with Cody Manufacturing in the US for canning systems, Pro Engineering in Milwaukee for pasteurizers. There's some other ones as well, API in Buffalo for flash pasteurizers. And then work with a couple conveying companies, but lately Bevco Conveying in BC. So we kind of take the knowledge of all these companies and think about them or use them in the thought process when we're doing any sort of planning. So if someone's looking at, I want to put in, expand my line a little bit and make it a little more efficient. So that's great, but are you considering like adding case packing at the end? Oh, you are? Okay, well, let's put that into the design so we know that it'll fit eventually. And we understand you're not going to get it right away. It's expensive, but let's make sure you have room to grow. And here's how it's going to look. And here's the air consumption it's going to use and the power it's going to require. And this is how tall it is off the floor. So maybe we should build our conveyors to that height in the future. So little things like that where you can help plan a little more and you have a little more foresight, knowing kind of maybe the end game, but also kind of all the knowledge that you've kind of take from all these partners. So kind of helps that, that's what we're doing is like a one-stop shop. No one's getting everything all in one stop, but at least we have some sort of idea of what it could look like if they did.
Right. The foresight for, at the very least, if someone comes to you with like, oh, this is a now problem, you could then, alleviate any of those now problems down the road, I guess is sort of what you're getting at.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's cool. I like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned, Kyle, I'm going to go back a little bit to what you said about you did have interest or potential ambition once upon a time to maybe open a brewery, and you kind of ran through the numbers and thought packaging is such a big part of this. maybe it makes more sense to enter this field. Do you think that it would ever make sense for you to open a brewery? Or if you think, I mean, we talk to brewers all the time, as well as brewery owners, and there's a lot of love and passion that goes into it. Maybe that trumps the idea of making a quick buck in the industry. Do you think that it can be a good investment to open a brewery, or you would look anyone square in the eyes and say, probably not a good idea unless you're just absolutely in love with the project?
Yeah, like I personally would not do that. After, I mean, it's a lot of work, and I mean, I knew that going like before that anyways, but I'm glad I did what I did. But yeah, is it a good idea to open a brewery? I mean, sure, if that's what you want to do and you have realistic expectations about it. I mean, yeah, sure. People, I meet lots of brewery owners that they're big, they're small, they're in between, or they work for breweries, and yeah, it's a great way to make a living, perhaps, but also it's a fun industry to be in. And yeah, you got to do it for the right reasons, like you said. Like it's really no one nowadays is going in and trying to. They're going to be this big brewery corporation. It's not realistic, unless you got a lot of money behind you. But I still think there's definitely a room for that small little local brewery to make beer and kind of for their community. And that model's always kind of worked to an extent. It certainly didn't help with all the pandemic and the closures, but I mean, I think we're kind of coming out on the other side of that. So I hope to see that kind of continue for these guys, and hope to see those restaurants and those kind of pub style things, and people coming in to buy beers, because that's where the real money is to be made. Or it's just pints of beer, right? So just putting kegs on the bar and having people come in and having a good time. And yeah, I think with the right opportunities and some money behind it and a little bit of luck, no reason why it can't work.
Fair enough.
Fair
I know
enough.
we're coming up on our hour a little bit, Kyle, but I did want to squeeze in a question. Just given that we've been speaking about beverage manufacturing and efficiency. A big part of that, especially in today's world, is reducing carbon footprint and reducing waste. So I have to imagine that definitely comes into play with Top 5 Solutions. And how are you guys approaching that? Have you found something new and innovative over the last little while? How are you guys handling tackling the issue of reducing carbon footprint and reducing waste?
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely at the forefront. And it's always been kind of, as we're looking at these things, like there's certain ways to be for to be a best in breed. But one of those is, yeah, like, well, how can we cut down on waste, and how can we be more efficient in terms of using less energy or using less plastic? So there's a couple of things that I would recommend that we personally have access to. And okay, so one of them would be in Ontario anyways, you see a lot of beer come in, they come in a flat, so it's like a small cardboard box and it's got a plastic wrapper on it. Really efficient way of doing it, but obviously it makes a lot of plastic. So we could go ahead and we could quote you a system for something that could do all that, but for a little more money. Maybe you want to remove all that plastic and put it into a cardboard box, like a carton. So something like that we see more people definitely interested in those exact kind of scenarios. Screw the plastic. Let's get into something a little more sustainable. Let's try the whole cardboard solution. Then there's things like, okay, well, we can, with better heat exchangers and better external calandrias and wort boilers, we can save energy in the brew house. We can start to condense your steam and use that for energy. We can use a vapor condenser on your brew kettle. So instead of boiling for 60 minutes, you can actually boil for 30 and get the same effects. The next kind of big thing I see personally is going to be nitrogen generation. That's where I see a lot of growth. People are going to start using less CO2 in the brewery if they can do that. So obviously you still got to carbonate like a tank of beer with CO2, but there's no reason why we can't use other gases to do a lot of other processes in the brewery, whether it's purging tanks, pushing liquid, using it on the can line or the bottle line or the keg line for pushing around liquids, purging it with oxygen, and nitrogen is a great gas for that. And it's free. It's just sitting there in our air. We just have to find a way to condense it, store it, filter it, and get it to a delivery method. So there are definitely nitrogen generators out there now. We have one with M&F Keg Technic. But like I think it's a great place for breweries to start looking. Again, it's always a balance of, well, it costs a lot now. Yes, but over time, maybe it saves you some money. It also helps things like you're not relying on a delivery company to drop off CO2. So there's a big call for it to be more sustainable as well. In terms of like independence, we're not relying on suppliers. Like with the pandemic and all the associated things that we've seen happen, a lot of it has been like supply chain, and you can't depend on things now. So the more independent, the more self-sufficient you can be, whether it's supplying your own energy or your own gases, whether that means sometimes it means using less people on the packaging line. There's been a lot of labor shortages too for some of these places. So we're seeing a lot of, and any industry will tell you this, but automation is becoming a major factor into a lot of these decisions. So you'll start to see some of these facilities get more and more automated, even these small to medium breweries that you never thought, well, why do they need to go automation? But the cost is coming down, and the cost of not having this solution is becoming prohibitive. So automation, getting rid of plastics, using less CO2 from various methods, using less energy, can all be kind of areas that we're looking at anyways.
Very interesting indeed. Well, Kyle, we're coming up on our hour mark, as Garrett mentioned, but I do have one final question for you. You mentioned, well, is it fair to say, this is my first little question, is it fair to say that still most of your clients are in beer? Is that fair?
Yeah, but not 90% or anything. We see a lot of customers in distilleries that they're using their spirits to make other beverages, usually cans. We're into co-pack facilities that aren't focused on beer per se at all. We've seen companies focus just on cannabis beverages. And then I've seen like coffee and water as well. So it's not all beer. Some of the products we do offer obviously specialize in beer, like brew houses and stuff like that. But the packaging equipment it can be anything. So I'd say it's a good mix. It's still strongest would be beer, but definitely a lot of other beverages. And like I said earlier, like the biggest market of growth is non-alcoholic beverages of all sorts. So
yeah, could you give us some examples in that? Like that could even be like sparkling, like a sparkling beverage. Like what did you call it? Ready to drink or ready to go?
Yeah. So an RTD is just like an all-encompassing ready to drink can. So it's a can that it's like a pre-mix of like a cocktail per se, or you could say. So it's like it could be a wine spritzer, it could be a seltzer, it could be I don't know, something else like a tomato cocktail thing. What's the name of that? Caesar. Thank you.
Caesar.
Bloody Mary. Yeah, one of those. So anything like that could be like an RTD.
Mhm.
But then we see other stuff like coffee too, cold brew coffees.
Right. Yeah, of course. We were talking to another a couple actually who run a canning and bottling company on the East Coast, and they mentioned wine in cans. Have you heard about that? Is this big? It was news to me.
Is it big? It's growing. I mean, I used to do wine canning with my old company too. I identified that as like one of those growth areas. So we were one of the first companies to do wine canning. Maybe in Canada, I'm not sure, but definitely one of the earlier ones for sure. But yeah, there's lots of products going in cans nowadays, wine included. Well, the wineries are funny because they usually have all their product ready all at once. So it's usually like in the spring, March or April, it's all ready to go. So they package it like all at the same time. And they've been using mobile bottling for years, the wineries. So yeah, we see some wineries doing that, mobile canning, and some have their own systems, but a lot of them use mobile.
Kyle Wilson, I think I'll speak for Garrett and myself. We learned a lot today, particularly
Absolutely.
within your industry and the wealth of knowledge you have just with your decade plus experience. It's wonderful. Kyle Wilson, thank you so much. Top 5 Solutions. Be sure to check them out for any needs that you may have. Kyle, thanks so much. We look forward to chatting again next time.
No problem. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Garrett. Thanks, Andy.
Cheers, Kyle. Thanks for joining us.
Cheers.
See ya. Bye.
Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all our interviews and beer-related content. Remember, craft beer is here.